You're listening to Swipe East, Swipe West, where we dive into the dating differences from coast to coast. I'm your host, Ashley Davis. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Swipe East, Swipe West, the dating and culture podcast focusing on differences from coast to coast. I'm your host, Ashley, and you can find me on Instagram at Swipe East, Swipe West, and me on TikTok at Ashley Angora. That's ASHLEYANNGORA. Thanks, everyone, for joining this week. If you're new here, welcome. And if you have been here before, welcome back. I start off each episode with a life update, and I gotta say, I don't think I have too many things to update you all on. I've been just super busy with work and just personal projects. This past weekend, my friends and I were in San Diego for this event called the Mustache Bash, where if you have all been following me for a while, you know last year when I went, there was a little bit of an incident with a certain man. I did see him at this event with who I believe is a new girlfriend. And we, like adults, ignored each other. So not really anything too much to share there. My friends and I went up and stayed with our friends that live in San Diego and had a really fun time. And then the weekend before, I went to another music event. And I gotta say, as much as I love going to these music events, I do meet people. I will say I am meeting people here and there. But sometimes I just wish and miss like going to a bar. You know, I can't say living in LA. And again, if you follow me, you know this, that I'm always, mixing and mingling with people all the time. But sometimes at music events, people kind of are in their own world, depending on the type of event and environment you're in. So maybe I can get my friends to go to a bar with me soon. I did bail on them the last time they invited me for St. Patrick's weekend, but they were going to a college-y area and I avoided that. And with that, we can dive right into this week's episode where we are talking all about Washington, D.C. I have one of my good friends, Michelle, joining us this week. And Michelle, I actually met when I was living in Philadelphia. I met her through a mutual friend. We had some wild nights out together, especially one particular night in Atlantic City, which is a story for another day. But Michelle actually moved to DC around the same time that I moved to LA. So we're going to talk all about her experience moving to DC around COVID, what it was like for her to make friends, her experience with like navigating the politics scene as someone that actually does not work in politics herself, and where she sees the future going for her. And I really enjoyed this conversation because not only do we get a bit of the lay of the land, but I know Michelle and I, again, just being friends, have had a lot of ongoing conversations in our personal life about men. And I think we dive into a lot of topics as well, including, some of that dating advice that you might be seeing swirling around social media. So we definitely get a little bit more introspective this week. I go on a couple rants near the end, so apologies. I was definitely probably dealing with some things at the time that this was recorded at the end of 2022. But with that, let's dive right into it, and I hope you enjoy. Michelle, I am so happy to talk to you. I feel like it's been so long since we've caught up.
Yeah, it really has. And I think last time I had blue hair, now I'm rocking blonde. So
I know, I was going to notice that every time I see you, you have a different color hair, but I love it.
Well, now I changed career paths from teaching to I work in financial services. So I'm like, I'm going to just keep like regular hair for now until maybe I can transition back. We'll see.
Oh, I did not know that either. When did that happen?
I left teaching in like late June. So last year was my last year. And then I started in early October.
Okay.
With my new job. So yeah.
Going well so far?
Yeah, I really like it. It's like 100% remote. So I enjoy the flexibility, especially.
Well, I'm super excited to talk to you about all things DC. So I know we met in Philly, and then I think we actually moved around the same time. I think you might have moved to DC a little bit before I moved out to LA, maybe. But would love to hear your thoughts on what you think of DC, what the city's like. I have my own personal thoughts on DC, but Give us the scoop. What's the lay of the land? What's it been like for you living there?
So I've been here a little over 3 years, and I had originally moved because I had a teaching job in Virginia. And I love it here. I live kind of in an area that's more, it feels more like suburbs, and it's more residential. So I know a lot of my neighbors. I babysit for them, dog walk for them. Like, I really like the community that I have and where I'm at. I'm more uptown than downtown, but there's like great access with public transportation. So I really enjoy the city. When I first got here, though, I didn't really know anyone. Like, I had maybe one or two friends. And so I was really trying to meet people and felt an immediate shift from being in Philly. Like, I would go out to bars and I noticed it was like very clicky. And a lot of people just were not trying to hang or like not trying to talk to anyone outside of the group that they came with, which was kind of strange for me because in Philly, like I had a big friend group and we didn't necessarily all stay together. Like we would go off and then like we might have met new friends during the night. So that was a big change. And I noticed people were very standoffish right away. Things changed a lot since then, but that was my immediate impression.
That's interesting because I also have similar thoughts on DC. I've been to DC only a few times. I stayed, one of my friends used to live out in Clarendon, which is right outside of like the DC proper in Virginia. So I would stay with her and we'd have like a Clarendon night. I loved going out in Clarendon. Clarendon Grill was my spot. We'd always like mix and mingle there. But whenever we went out in like DC, I guess like DC proper, like the actual city, we could never, like, we tried multiple different areas. I can't even think of what the names of all of them are, but we would like go to one area and try like 3 or 4 bars. And I swear to God, it was like unintentional bar hopping. Like we would walk in, we would try to like scan the room, try to talk to people. We would have a terrible time and then we'd leave. And then we'd go to the next bar and have like the same thing happen and then we'd leave. So it's kind of interesting that you kind of, I guess, like had maybe some of that type of experience because of the people when you first got there?
I think so. And obviously, this is just my experience, but I felt like when I was in Philly or other places, like I'd be standing at the bar and just naturally like start a conversation with the person next to me or just anyone around me. And that was not happening in DC. People were like, it felt like I was actively being avoided. And I just felt really awkward about that. And just DC is such a transient city where people are like constantly coming and going. So I've kind of noticed like if you've been here less than 2 years, or maybe you have a job that you're not sure if you're going to stay, or you're not committed to the area, people just like are not really interested in like mingling. Or maybe you don't know enough people, so you're kind of committed to getting to know the people that you came with. And I'm just not used to that because I'm from the Philly area and I had like a big group of friends that I'd known for a long time. So I don't know if that's like the key difference, but it was very apparent and I felt really awkward because I'm there trying to make friends and like no one's trying to talk to me.
So then how did you eventually make friends?
A lot of my friends were either through teaching or my roommates. Like I said, it's very transient. I've had like 11 roommates, I want to say, in the past 3 years. And I don't know if that's like a common DC thing, but I think in order for like my landlord to kind of keep up with how often people are leaving, because a lot of people don't stay beyond a year or 2 years, or at least not a lot of people that I've met. They kind of make it so you sign up for like a year-long lease, but you can break it with whenever, as long as you find someone to replace you. So I've just like met a lot of people like through my roommates, or I've been close with my roommates. So
I guess a follow-up question I have is, do you think that it's such a transient city because of the politics that happen? Like a lot of people might move there because they're working on like a campaign or for a candidate, and then that term may or may not end and then they leave. Like obviously there's other jobs, like to your point, like you were a teacher, you're in finance, outside of politics, but by nature, I feel like that's what DC in itself is known for. And I feel like part of that, just from my experience and what I've heard about the area, is that a lot of people kind of also stick with their group based on like political affiliation status. I'm thinking of I think it's Scandal with Olivia Pope and kind of how all that stuff worked as well. So do you think that that has anything to do with it as well?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think people aren't sure how long they're going to be here, so they're not really committed to like staying in the area either, especially if they have like that kind of job. And I've definitely had to be more aware of people's like political leanings. I had a really terrible date with someone. We had quite a few dates. Like we had been seeing each other for a little bit. And then I don't know how like we got on this topic, but he like explicitly told me that he doesn't care about people of color and doesn't care about gay people. And I was like, did I hear you wrong? Like I kept asking him questions because I was like I must have misunderstood. There's no way you just said that to me. And he was like, well, like I would help someone if I saw that they were in trouble, but like I'm not going to go out of my way to like help anyone like within those populations. And I was like, what? Like what? And I just really thought he
Oh my
like
God.
was miss speaking, and so I kept trying to clarify. He's like, "You're so annoying. Like I can't say anything to you because you get so upset." And I'm like, so I went to the bathroom and I was like calling my friends to come pick me up, and they couldn't. So I just walked up and I was like, "Yeah, so I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna leave." And he was like, "Are you mad at me?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I just left. Like I didn't really consider before that. I think because of like the area that I grew up in, and then being in Philly, like I didn't really think to look at that, which is my bad. But yeah, that was a rude awakening, and now I'm much more cautious and pay more attention to like people's jobs and their political affiliations for sure.
I mean, I think that is in a lot of other places as well, and has definitely been heightened over the past, like, what is it, like 6 years or so, as well. I know even myself, like living in LA, I think LA overall, like actual Los Angeles city, is liberal.
Hmm.
But then a lot of California is actually very conservative, because there's a lot of like farmland. You go a little bit more south of LA to Orange County. That's actually very conservative.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean everyone there is conservative, or because, and that also, just because you are conservative doesn't mean that you have extremist conservative beliefs. Or you might, or you
Yeah.
could be a liberal and have some different beliefs. So I think it also gets dicey with that type of things. And I know some of my feelings have gone up and down with politics and ideologies, because just like you, like I always grew up in very liberal places. So it wasn't even a topic, or even dating a Republican versus Democrat. It was never as extreme as it was today, because of some of the things that have come out and have been talked about, honestly, since Trump has been president, if we're going to say the elephant in the room. But it's definitely like, I know for a while, this is something I had to like work through. Like Orange County, again, like was very like Republican conservative. So I was like, I need to avoid that area because it's all these Republicans. Republicans equal Trump, and Trump equals basically what you just said. But I've actually like met and have a lot of friends that grew up there that don't have those ideologies or feelings at all. And again, you can be Republican and not be that extreme.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, but I feel you, because it's not, and especially in a city, again, like DC, that is very political focus. And you could very well, probably more likely in that area, be on one extreme or another and get more heated about it, especially if you are working on a campaign.
Yeah.
Probably something to be more aware of as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, to your point, has gotten a lot more divisive with the issues that are going on, and just, well, I mean, it's probably always been like that, but it's gotten a lot more heated recently. And then I can't see how being in DC, you can say like you're not political or just kind of like ignorant to the issues. That was kind of my point. And not everyone cares about those things, but it's important to me. So that's why I just had to put that on my radar as another thing to look out for.
So are there people that are like saying that? Like, is that what he had said before?
I had no indication that he felt that way before. Otherwise, it would not, I would not have gone out with him. But that was just shocking to me. And then also, then he was like, "Oh, are you mad at me?" Like, yeah. Like you called me annoying and said like me having an opinion bothers you. And then also just like are acting like you don't care about other people or unaware of unaware of issues that are happening like right around us. We're in DC. You cannot act like you don't know what's going on. So
Yeah.
that just bothered me a lot. And also he was mean. I don't really like people who like joke in a mean way when they like insult you. And at the time I was looking for a job, so I was unemployed, and he used to it was like a little joke to him to like make fun of me not having a job. I was like, that's not really funny because it's like I can deal with sarcasm and like, picking on people kind of, but like it's a really difficult situation to be in and like stressful when you don't have a job and you're looking. So there are a lot of things I should have seen before.
So he was a guy, he liked to neg,
I guess,
N-E-G.
yeah. No, yeah.
I hate those. Yeah, I hate those types of people.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I can deal with like sarcasm or like, banter, but when you're like
Yep,
actively insulting people, that's not really funny to me. So,
right.
and then it was clear that he
Yeah.
didn't give a shit about anyone. So that was the real like, no, I'm cool.
I mean, is he an exception to the rule though? Like, have you been on other dates where politics have come up, or that it hasn't been that have, I guess, gone well aside from that?
I don't think I've explicitly talked about it with a lot of people. Maybe they've given me indications from things that they would say, but that was just the most like egregious. And I've also started looking at like the profile on people's like what they say. If they say they're non-political, also I'm like fuck that. So like I've been more aware and haven't made that mistake again. So
Got it. So is that how you're mostly going on dates then, is dating apps, or are you meeting people? I mean, I guess, like, are you eventually meeting people in bars when you are going out with a group, or are you meeting, is it through your roommates still and friends, or how is that
I
working?
have a funny story about that because I was like primarily on like Hinge and dating apps and trying to meet people, but I felt like, oh, maybe it would be better to meet people in person. So I signed up for a queer kickball league or LGBTQ plus kickball league that my friend, she was on another team and I really wanted to join her team. So she told me like when the registration was open. And so I tried to join her team, but it was already full. So I'm like, oh, I'll just pick another team and I'll like, see people eventually. So I picked a team based on its name because it had a funny name. It was a team of all men. I looked and it was like the day before our first game, it was all gay men. And I was like, God damn it. Like the point was I wanted
No.
to meet people in person and I joined this team and they tolerated me. They were really nice. And like I tried my best and I like met people, but that was my attempt at meeting people in person and it didn't happen. So they were also a lot of them were like married and were friends with each other, so they weren't really trying to like branch out and be friends either. So
So that is actually really interesting to me because I'm like pointing at the screen while I'm talking, because I feel like in many other places, like I know people that I've interviewed from Vegas, my experience in Philly, have had a lot of success meeting people like through a sports league. I know I met a whole different group of friends through kickball. My friends have met people, I think through, it was in Vegas when it was also through kickball and like rock climbing gym. So it's like very intriguing to me that this like weird like dynamic about really keeping to yourself and like your own community and not branching out even carried through in like a group activity. It was like they didn't want to let anyone else in that didn't have like that they didn't know or have like status or clout or something, is like
well,
how that
I
reads
don't
to
want to
me.
say that they weren't trying to exclude me. A lot of them worked on the hill, so they had really busy schedules, or they were married, so like they had limited time, and there was a lot of different factors. So like they weren't actively mean or anything. It was just like it
Okay.
didn't click, unfortunately. So like
Got
the
it.
point was really like I tried to like put myself out there and meet people in person, and then like the attempt was just it failed so hard. And they were also really good at kickball, and I don't know the rules. And I'm like, they put me in shortstop, which is like a key position in our like we were in the championship. I was like, this is bull. This is you should not be doing this. Like I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I don't know the rules. And so that was not good. Like they were competitive and good. And so it was just like I just failed really hard at that attempt. But they weren't mean or
Okay.
anything.
Got it. All right. Well, that's a little bit better. Yeah, I'm just used to like the sports league like being designed like to meet people, to branch out, make friends. Like at least in Philly, there's like a big like drinking culture after, and you would like go to the bar. So it's like I guess like that's also where it's like I don't know. Like I feel like you join that with the expectation that it's not about you and your friends and like necessarily winning all the time, which it kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
They didn't say that, but I could tell that they, like, really
Yeah.
wanted to win, and also I brought, like, because my friend, her team, like, drinks, like, throughout the entire game, so for the first game, I brought, like, a six-pack, and they were just, like, staring at it like that was not the vibe, and I was like, "Oh my god," so it's clinking around in my bag, and I'm trying to, like, move my bag, and it's, like, the beer's popping out, I'm like, "Oh, all right." So that's clearly not what we're doing here. And they would go out after, but then our games were on Thursday. Every Thursday was like shirtless Thursday at this gay bar down the street. So we would go out, but then they would go there, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing that one. So
Oh. Well, okay. Well, maybe you just joined the wrong
I
team.
think that is what happened,
Okay.
unfortunately. But they were fine. It just didn't. We didn't click. We didn't vibe, unfortunately.
Got it. So it is the dating apps then
Yeah.
to meet guys you go out with. You say that with so
I
much
know.
disdain.
I know,
Yeah.
because it's been I think I've, like, changed a lot over, my time in DC, so I've definitely, like, learned and, um, it's going differently, but I'm just kind of exhausted, like, I have, like, dating app burnout. 'Cause I
Hmm.
just get, like, 100 matches or whatever. Because 'cause I'll, like, have, take time off from it, and then I come back and it's so many people and so many messages, but it's kind of constantly, like, you match with someone and then no one says anything, or, like,
Yeah.
someone does say something, but then the conversation doesn't carry. It's just, like, it's disappointing, and it's a lot of, like, kinda mental energy or just exhaustion.
Yeah. I definitely feel that with one dating in general, but two with the dating apps. I really don't enjoy them. I'm definitely like a chronic download deleter, but I tend to not use them more. And over the summer, I had broken my arm and I couldn't really do anything. Like I was pretty much confined at home. And I was like, well, I need to like fill my time and do something. And it was like scrolling on Instagram, scrolling on TikTok. And then I was like, I guess I'll just scroll on Hinge. But I was also traveling a lot too. And even once I got my cast off, like I was in physical therapy, I still couldn't do a ton of stuff. And to your point, like I got like I'd say a decent amount of like matches, but then I would like be leaving in a week to go on vacation. And it was just like constant like I would yeah, it would either fizzle out. And then if it didn't fizzle out, and I feel like a brat, like I'm sure people are gonna take this a wrong way, but then like I would get asked on dates, but then I would have like only a few days. And I would be like, well, I don't know who to like say yes to. And also I'm only here for a few days. I'm tired. I want to see my friends. And then I would be upfront. I'm like, hey, I'm traveling for a while. Like I can hit you up when I'm back. And then either like I'm unmatched by the time I'm
Oh,
back.
no.
They don't reply. Like, like they don't reply. They're like salty that I'm gone for so long. And honestly, that's probably my bad that like I probably like in hindsight shouldn't have been messaging or matching with people when I like wasn't really available physically for a while. Because I realized like I'm a casual dater in the sense of like I don't necessarily always go into things looking for a relationship, but I also am fine with taking things slow as long as people are just like communicating and open with me. And a lot of people with dating don't have that mindset, which I forget a lot. And they like are dating like for marriage, for a relationship. They want to move really quick. And that's like where I don't align a lot with that. So that was also my bad. I take responsibility for anyone out there. But yeah, that's also where I struggle with the apps as well.
I think
It's a
it's
lot.
difficult, like, were you just communicating through the app, or did you have people's phone numbers?
It was pretty much at that point, like all through the app. And this is like something I've talked about this on my TikTok before. Like I'm like some guys would get my Instagram and honestly I hated that because then they were always like watching what I was doing and it like made it worse because they would get like they would like one guy in particular he actually has since like removed me on Instagram and unfollowed me. But the same thing. I was like, hey, I'm traveling for like 3 weeks. When I get back, like I'll hit you up and we can like go surfing. He was going to take me surfing. And it was like all these like salty, like, thanks for the invite messages. And I'm like,
Mm-mm.
dude, I'm not around. Like I told you, I'm busy. I'm like traveling. I have plans. And it just like, I feel like they take things the wrong way or like think you're lying. I have no idea. I will never know what went through this guy's head,
Yeah.
but I feel like sometimes like that's worse. But then it's like a catch-22 because then I also don't really want to give my number to like a random stranger that I'm not going to. And then I feel like there's like pressure there to like, how much do you text? And like
I agree.
on either person's end. So it's like a lose situation. Like you literally have to be emotionally available and like time available. And people take the time thing the wrong way a lot. Like I'm a really busy person and I need to like make myself less busy because people think it's an excuse. It's actually not. So that's like something I'm trying to like work through from my awareness as well, which it sounds like that could also be an issue in DC with like the politic and working on the Hill and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Or just different jobs in general. Like being a teacher, people get offended that I wasn't able to like answer them all day. And I'm that's my job. I can't like take time away from the children in front of my face or like my 15-minute lunch break to text you. So I completely understand like the
Yeah.
time and being busy, and I'm just not a good texter in general. So I totally understand that. But oh man. Yeah, it's kind of like a commitment when you give either your Instagram or your phone number to people, because then I do feel a pressure to like actually interact with people a lot more. Or like if I
Yeah.
don't want it's not working out and I don't want to talk anymore, then I feel like I owe someone like an explanation, which I feel like I don't like to ghost people anyway, but it's just there's more added pressure, and someone has more access to you that you don't know, and I don't really like that. But I generally talk to people for like weeks before I meet them, so
Oh, wow.
like that wouldn't be an issue for me. Taking it slow and like someone going away. That's actually happened a few times where like I was away or someone else was, and we just had to like talk throughout that time. But I don't think I'm the norm. I don't think like a lot of people act like that. They might think that's an excuse, or
No.
like you're trying to get out of meeting them, or it's never going to happen. Because I think a lot
Yes.
of people are just like in that perpetual talking stage, and they're what's going through their mind is probably like, oh, this person just wants like a pen pal, or they just want someone to talk to
Mm-hmm.
when they're like, bored or whatever, but they have no intention of meeting. So I think that's why people get frustrated with like long periods of just talking and not meeting.
Yeah. And I feel like it's perpetuated by a lot of just like either toxic advice or advice that people say that's not applicable to everyone. Like to my core, I hate the statement, if he wanted to, he
Oh my
would. And like,
the TikTok advice, like TikTok therapist, can you please stop?
dude,
Please.
I know. It's like, honestly, like I had to not be on TikTok and I have to like, I have to use it like to an extent, like when I work in social media, my full-time job. And also to just like this podcast and like I'm learning how to DJ. I have to like like you just have to be present. It's society now. It
Mhm.
just is. But I really have tried to cut back on my scrolling because it was getting to a point where I found myself like, this is psychotic. I found myself like doing things or like thinking things because I was getting like inundated with this like advice that honestly didn't, probably looking back, apply to me or the situation I was in.
Yeah.
Because everyone's different and not everyone's experience is your experience. So again, just like I see all this stuff like, oh, if they take a day to reply, they don't like you. And I'm like, sometimes I take a week because I forget.
Yeah.
With people I like really like, or some of my really close friends, or I'm like going through something, or like we were just talking about, it might take me a while to meet up with someone because I'm actually genuinely busy. And when I'm saying busy, it's not an excuse like everyone on TikTok is saying. And it like makes me nervous because I'm like, shit, like if I'm out here, like I think I'm pretty, for the most part, chill, unless someone upsets me and then I
get a little upset. But like, if I'm acting this way, I can't even imagine how someone that's like insecure, and I'm like obviously a little insecure as well, but like super insecure or like unstable in relationships or like going through a really bad situationship or, whatever, is thinking when they see all this advice, like not to derail our conversation, but my God, like I like couldn't believe like I caught myself getting affected by it and had to just like pull myself out of it. And that's why like when even through this podcast and like posting videos, I try not to like give advice. And I'm very much like, this is my experience and my opinion. It might not be your experience, and that's fine. But like, yeah, it's wild out there.
Well, it's hard when you're being bombarded with this advice, or like someone who's saying they have they're a therapist or they have these credentials, and they're like, you're getting constant advice and it's very extreme and kind of like alarmist. It's hard not to like take any of that in, if not like, a majority of it. But I think I've just tried to think like, check in with myself and what am I actually feeling, instead of trying to like take on their advice. Or if I'm going through something, I will try to communicate that, like, hey, I don't have the capacity right now to get back to you, but like I will, I promise. So I've kind of like,
Yeah.
I try to combat like that terrible my terrible texting habits with like communicating that, like, I just don't, I'm too busy today. So I'm kind of try to be aware of that and like turn it into a way to like, make it a point to communicate that to other people. So, but it's TikTok is real. The advice, the crazy advice or whatever. I don't like that either.
I've definitely been like I said, actively working on that. And like, yeah, no, I agree. The communication thing is the most important thing. Because I feel like that's when people start getting nervous in relationships, is when you don't communicate. So like if someone hasn't talked to you for a week, it's just like hey, I'm busy this week, I'll text you when I can. Like that's literally all it takes. Or like to your point, hey, I can't respond right now, I'll get back to you. Or I've been going through some things, sorry, I haven't reached out. I think then the problem becomes on the other person. Like, are you secure in your relationship, whether it's a serious one or you're in a talking stage, whatever you want to call it, I'm using quotes, to like believe them. And I think that's where things like
the imbalance.
Yeah. But that just depends on you and that person and what your dynamic is, I guess.
Well, also, if you're hearing if they wanted to, they would, and then someone's not, like, that's not great advice that's inclusive of like, mental health issues or just life events that could be
Yeah,
happening.
I agree.
So, but that's also like, if someone needs more than I can give, then we're not compatible anyway, unfortunately. So you have to
Right.
figure that out as well.
And that's what dating is, and
I know.
understanding if you're compatible.
It sucks sometimes when you like really like someone or you feel like you're really compatible and you're just not.
Yeah.
Like I recently dated someone that I really, really liked. He had some weird like he was very caring, I guess. Like before we even met, he like sent me food to I was dog sitting at a neighbor's house and I didn't have any like groceries or food there, and he had like food delivered to the house. Like he was just like a really nice, like would go out of his way kind of person. Um what else did he do? He like
That's nice.
drove me to the airport and picked me up like our like third time hanging out, like was just extremely nice. And so it was a rough one when that didn't work out. I think we were just like we weren't fundamentally compatible, unfortunately. Um,
But I think it's good to recognize that and pull yourself out of that situation versus like trying to force something to work. Because I know those, like whenever I've been in those situations, like it's been hard, but they've been the easiest for me to get over, because normally like both people involved kind of know, and you like normally communicate it because you have a mutual respect for each other. Like I feel like the times where I like am like really struggling is when you're just not on the same page and someone isn't saying it because they're scared or whatever it is. So even though it sucks, like I feel like just the fact that you can recognize it and move on is like the best thing you could possibly do in that type of situation.
that's true. And I think that's been the biggest change like throughout my dating like history or my time here has been like I didn't really have that. Maybe I didn't have the self-awareness, or I didn't have like the ability to communicate in that way. And lately I've really been like connecting deeply with people I've gone out with, and we have that like capacity, or we feel safe enough to have those conversations. He actually like I had told him that I like when I break things off with someone, I don't want to talk to them again unless it's like that sounds harsh, but I just think it hurts people more when you keep acting like
Yeah.
you could be more. Or it gets confusing. Like so, at least not right away. I don't want to talk to someone. And he like I left things at his house, and he like had them mailed to me and like individually like
Oh my
packaged
God.
them. Um, but unfortunately, I was telling a friend he had an Android, and so I was telling a friend I had the voice memo app, and I was telling my friend what happened in a voice memo, and I sent it to him. It was about him, and I sent it to him, and I was like, "Oh,
Oh
it wasn't
no.
bad. I was just like detailing what happened, and so that was really embarrassing." But like I said, we had a lot of respect for each other. I think so. It just didn't work out.
So what do you think has changed since, I guess, your time in DC that has made you kind of find these people you've connected with more? Because I think you and I, just as we're friends, have talked about this, about finding people that are a bit of a reflection of you. And like, if you're emotionally unavailable, you might attract those people. So have you just find that change in yourself, or have you found that you've just been more open to find or look for or want a relationship, or what do you think has changed?
I think I was definitely emotionally unavailable and before, and I also didn't have the time like with teaching, and I had made a major career change to teaching, and I just like didn't have the capacity really for anyone else, and I wasn't emotionally available because I was like constantly stressed and getting over a previous relationship. So I've realized that recently, like, oh, like what has been the change? Like, why am I connecting with people more deeply? And I do think I'm more open to it. I'm a lot more flexible, I think, and open minded. Like, I was learning how to set boundaries before, I think, and I was just like really rigid, and it wasn't a real boundary. So I've just, I think, done a lot more self reflection and become more open, and that's been a big change.
What type of boundaries are you talking to? Because I feel like I struggle with setting boundaries because I don't know. I like, I don't want to say I'm a pushover, but I feel like I try to give people the benefit of a doubt, and then it gets too far is like my struggle. So I'm curious, like, what you were doing.
Well, when I first was starting to set boundaries, like say someone wanted to like go on a date at 8 and I felt that was too late and I'd be like, oh, 7:30. Like just these like things that weren't really like, does that really matter? Like, why am I doing that? And it was kind of like because I didn't want someone else to dictate a situation, or I didn't want them to have control, or whatever the case was. I was just trying to like set limits. And then instead I've realized like, okay, a boundary is like when I feel uncomfortable with something, I need to say no. Like I can't think of a good example, but I've um I've treated it a lot more like a self-reflection, or I look internally, how am I feeling? Like if this person doesn't make me feel seen or heard, or like they're doing something that just makes me uncomfortable, like that's when I need to like prevent that behavior, or that's when I need to take more action. Not these like arbitrary like time frames and those kinds of things. I think it was like I was trying to seem like strong or something by having like these limits or restrictions, and that's not really how boundaries work. It's more like protecting myself or identifying my needs and communicating that with other people.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's less about having a control over another person or situation, but just like looking out for yourself and what's right for you
Yeah.
and your needs.
A big one I think would be I will never like if I have made plans with my friends or anyone, I will never break those for someone I'm dating. Or like I won't alter like set things. Like say I have a schedule where I like will like work out after work or whatever, like I'm reading or something like that. Like if I have a commitment, I'm not going to break it for someone else. Um yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on the different areas of DC, and if you find different types of people there. And I know, again, like, for example, I mentioned like Clarendon, Virginia, which is, I feel like people sometimes say like DC, like greater DC, I'm using quotes again, as like areas surrounding it, even though it's not like DC proper. I think that's kind of like in LA, like I'm in Long Beach, which is technically LA County, but it's not really LA. So I'm curious to hear how you think of the area, if you find different personalities depending on if you're in like the one area I know, like Georgetown versus like a Virginia or somewhere else. So what are your experiences or thoughts on that?
This is honestly really embarrassing that I've been here for like over 3 years and I can't name like a lot of the neighborhoods. Obviously, I know like Georgetown and like major places, but I don't know a lot of DC neighborhoods. But I think on the whole, what I've noticed, like we call this the DMV area, like DC, Maryland, Virginia. I've noticed that people who are like from the area or are more committed to like staying here, like if you've been here over 2 years or so, I want to say, and that might depend on your job, if you work in politics or on the hill, those people tend to be more like nicer and tend to be more like open for dating. But then if you're like a transplant and you've been here under a certain amount of time, or you're not sure how long you'll be here, those people are a lot meaner, or they're like more clicky because they're probably trying to connect with the people around them.
So when you're going on dates, like, are you trying to find people, like, how, I guess, like, how are you weeding, like, this is a bad term, so I hate that I'm using it, but like, how are you weeding people out? Like, how are you, like, are you asking, like, or finding out if people are kind of here for the long haul or not? Is that something that's important for you in your dating? Like, given how transient it is?
It is. And I am only on Hinge at this point. And so they've added a feature that says like what you're looking for. And so I will look at that mainly if I'm trying to like figure that out. But I also, it's just like conversation, if I can actually like get along with someone. But I really won't mess around with people who say that they want a short term relationship and that's it, because I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. So that's about it. Like that's a major thing I'll look at, and then just like does our conversation flow, and do we get along? I of course look at other things, but those are like the big things that I pay attention to.
What else do you look at? I'm curious.
I mean, I do look at their political affiliations as well. I look at where they are, because a lot of people will say they're in DC and then they're in Baltimore, which is about an hour away. Or the last person I was seeing was in Maryland, like 45 minutes away. So that doesn't really matter that much to me, but it can get like, I know some people, it can get exhausting because a lot of people, if you live in like a suburb of Virginia or Maryland, you're probably coming to me more often because I'm like in DC or in the city, or there's more things to do around me. So I am mindful of that, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker.
Yeah, I know we have similar experiences in LA. Yeah, my radius is quite large. It's like 50 miles. And that's then my deal breaker. I'm like really bad with mileage now because we don't really talk in terms of mileage out here. It's time because of all the traffic. Like, oh, it'll take me 20 minutes. Now it's going to take me 2 hours because I waited 20 minutes to leave. But yeah, distance is definitely, I've talked about this before on the podcast, but a deal breaker out here. I was out recently in Hermosa Beach, which is in the South Bay area. It's normally, if there's no traffic, 25-minute drive. I met a guy, we were like chatting, and he was like, oh, like, where do you live? He lived up the road. And I was like, oh, I'm down in Long Beach. He was like, and you came all the way here?
How long was it? It was 20 minutes?
It was 20 minutes.
Some people
it was 20 minutes.
They have a different idea about traveling.
Yeah, well, and especially like, I feel like I feel like it's all relative to the city, right? Because if we were back in Philly, 20 minutes is kind of far. Like that's like true. Almost in a car, one end from the city to the other. Like you would do it, but that seems far. Whereas now that I live in LA, I'm like 20 minutes is nothing. Like 20 minutes I can get from where I live in Long Beach to like the other side of Long Beach. So to go to a whole new area isn't bad. And then I've met guys in Venice, which is a little bit more north. So like 30 to 40 minutes, who literally, it's just happened with at least 2 or 3 guys from that area. I'll meet them. I'll be up there. And they're, again, same reaction, shocked I'm up there. Shocked that I would even come up there. Shocked that I'm heading home that night and not like crashing at a friend's place or whatever. And then it's like the casual, oh, let me know when you're back in town. In town, they say. This has happened with multiple men that they've said that. Not just like, at first it happened once and I was like, that's kind of weird. Maybe because he's like from here. But then it happened with like another local. It happened with a transplant. And like, I'll text them. I did text like a couple of them when I was back up in the area. And they'd be like, oh, like, how long are you staying up here for? As if I'm like literally visiting from out of state for days. And I'm like, dude, it's 35 minutes for me to drive. I'm like heated because it's so frustrating. I'm like, it's 35 minutes like to drive here. Like, I don't understand. And you think I'm staying for like days?
That is crazy. And it's funny to like, that's funny to think about because it would take me like 40 minutes, if not more, to get to other parts in DC or like within the same city. So like really, you could be within like taking that time within the same city as well. So I don't know. Some people just have, maybe it depends on if you have a car, but some people just have a different idea about time and travel. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's that. I think also like it, well, because then what's funny too is like, so in LA, I get it to a point as well, because like I work like you fully remote. So I'm at home all day and I don't necessarily want to always be commuting, but every once in a while I'm like, I would love to go to West Hollywood. And if I time it right, it's like 45 minutes. Sometimes it takes me 30 minutes and it's nice just to like get out of your house, get out of your area, do something different. Every neighborhood here has like very different types of people. Mm-hmm. And I'm still very single and I haven't had luck in Long Beach. So like, why not explore somewhere else? But then it sucks because you'll get there and like 9 times out of 10, they have this reaction of like, oh my God, I can't believe you live so far. And I get it, because if you're commuting to and from work in traffic every day, the last thing you want to do is then add on another like potentially up to an hour plus commute to see someone that you don't know if you're going to hit it off with. And it's just like another investment and of your time, whereas you could find ideally someone in your area. But then what's funny is like I recently, I guess a few months now ago, was in San Diego, which is an hour and a half to 2.5 hour drive, depending on traffic. And I was asked out. I was at a festival. I was asked out on like 4 or 5 dates while I was there, which is like shocking based on my experience here in LA. And I told them all, I'm like, oh, I live in like Long Beach. I don't live here. And they're like, that's not far. Like, that's not far at all. Like, they're like, why don't you drive back down? And I'm like, I'm absolutely not driving like 2 hours to go on a date with you. They're like, well, we'll come up. Like, I'm like, wow. No, like, and it's so crazy because like to them, probably because they're not commuting like that all the time, like that seemed like no problem. But then in LA, it's like, oh, 20 minutes is too far because they're sick of driving you know what I mean? So I think it's just like crazy how that works. So all relative, I guess, and what your priority is.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors, I'm sure. But like, what would be like your upper limit? Like, what would be like the farthest you would go, or in general? Because it might depend. If there's like someone really great, you might bend that.
I think that that's just what it is. And it's like, if I was out one night and I met someone that like seemed really cool, that I really vibed with, like obviously it would need to find him attractive as well. Like I would probably go like an hour drive, like one way. At times, like there's some places that drive would take 2 hours, but I would just like I have to time it with traffic. But again, I work from home all day. I'm not driving a lot. And I haven't really met that many people that I've like clicked with out here. So I'm like willing to do that if I met the right person. And I've actually met guys out that I've thought were super cool. And I'm like, oh, 45 minutes, that's not bad. But where my problem is like I was saying before, the energy they give back to me almost off the bat is like, oh, like, let me know when you're around. Let me know when you're in the area. And like, it's so passive.
That's so weird to me.
Well, and it's just so passive that it comes off to me of like, and maybe I'm just like misreading it just because of my experience with dating, but that comes off to me as like, I'm not that interested in you, or I'm not as like interested in maybe I am, because I'd be willing to drive the 45 minutes, or they have other priorities in their life that drive is too much, which it could be. And I'm just like, why would I then go out of my way to plan something to go to you if I'm not getting that like energy back? Whereas if I met someone out and they were like, as you can tell, I'm like, it's a heated topic for me.
That's okay.
But if,
Let it all out.
I know if I met someone out and they were like, hey, like, I'd love to take you for drinks. We can meet in the middle, or I'll come to you, or do you want to come up to the area since you like seem to come here? I don't care. Like, I don't mind. Like, if they even just like asked, I would like do it, but it's just not the energy that I get out.
Well, I think it's a fair point. Like whether or not it's the energy or I don't know. I just feel like that might not meet people's needs, and I've realized like that is a need that I have, someone who can plan, like, well, say what they want and then also like act on that. Like if someone is going to like say they want to go out with me but then not plan anything, or they don't seem to be willing to come to me, that is not, it's not going to work out. Like I want someone, cuz I don't like to be responsible for everything, like asking someone out and planning a date or just coordinating all the time. Like if someone's not going to reciprocate that, it's not going to work, at least for not for me. And it sounds like you're on the similar page.
Yeah, that I had an experience like that earlier this year where this guy was like hitting me up like every week, like wanted to hang out. Asked like and I should have seen the flags. I ignored them, but it would have saved me a lot of trouble. But yeah, he was like, let me know if you want to get drinks. And I was like, yeah, I'm down. Then I had to follow up and be like, when? Where? What time?
Mm-hmm.
And like, and again, like I knew he wanted to because he was, and then I was just like, dude, you asked me, like, why am I planning everything? Like, and I guess like I just have the mindset of like whoever asks should plan. So like if I had asked him, I would be like, hey, do you want to meet up? And it's the same how I would treat a friend. Like if I asked you to hang out, I'd be like, okay, do you want to do this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just my mindset of it. So I was just like, am I your mom? like
if I was like, hey, Ashley, you want to hang out? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, cool. Like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, almost like, I'm like, was this like a validation thing for you? Like you just wanted to see if I say yes, like the chase? Like, I have no idea. Like,
I don't know.
Who knows?
A planner. I don't really know, but I do recognize that's not going to work for me. And I have no problem planning at least some things, but if it's like my sole responsibility, you can kind of tell when someone's just going to say, let's hang out and then do nothing from there. I can't do it.
Well, even like, I don't mind. I know people have different opinions on this, but I don't even mind if you say, if they ask you out and then they plan it, like they'll say, hey, are you free like Wednesday 8? Do you want to get dinner? I'll come to you. Do you have recommendations? Because I don't know the area. Like that's fine for me. You know, like even that like is fine, but just like the lack of doing anything.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
No.
The zero decision making is it.
Is that a lot prevalent in DC that you found?
I don't think so. People are pretty, I don't want to say type A. But no, that's not even a fair assessment. But people are pretty good planners, or at least a lot of people I've gone out with. But then there's the few that I'm just like, I've just realized that's something that I don't like. Especially like when I was teaching and I like already used up so much of my brain power. Like I had to be on with children all day and make a million decisions, like, telling everyone all day. And then I'm trying to then I'm responsible for planning every aspect of a date on top of that. It didn't happen that often, but when it did, I was like, no.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. I'm like, dude, I'm like doing things all day at work. And like, not to say that they're not either, but it's like when it's my turn to put the effort in as far as planning things, like I will do it, but I expect the same.
Yeah, I want a shared responsibility. I have no problem doing it, and I'm able to, but all the time, it's like it was too much.
So I feel like throughout this conversation, it seems like you've found like it seems like it was a bit of a struggle at first moving there, especially since I think it was, if you said 3.5 years, like a little bit before COVID as well. But it seems like the city, I don't know if it's like the city or just the career change or everything kind of helped you navigate dating a little bit better, would you say, since like leaving Philly? Or like, do you have any thoughts? Like you kind of like did a lot of introspection
Yeah.
since getting there.
It was hard moving here right before COVID because it was like 6 months before, so I really didn't have an opportunity to get out. And then in that time, yeah, I've just been able to explore a lot more recently. I've built like a stronger connection with friends and like my roommates, and I think that's helped me branch out. Yeah, a lot has changed. I think changing careers again was also very good for me. Like I love being at home and having the flexibility to like go for a walk on lunch and take care of myself, kind of. So, yeah.
Do you think you're going to stay there for the long haul, or would you move back to Philly or somewhere
I'm not sure
else?
yet. I actually, my the owners of my home are coming back, so I have to be out by June 1st, and so I'm exploring some options. Yeah, I don't know yet. We'll see. I would kind of like to be here for long term, but in the meantime, I would like to explore other living in other places because I've only really been in Pennsylvania and then here. So it'd be interesting to see like, the personalities of other cities, but I have a bit of time. So do you think you'll stay in LA?
I think I'm going to stay here longer than expected. I've already been here longer than I thought. And part of that is because COVID, I couldn't
Yeah.
do a ton. I feel like there's just so much like in the city and around the city to do that I haven't done yet. And there's just a lot of like creativity and creative people, which is why I wanted to move here. So it's just really expensive
Yeah.
is the thing. And like similar to you, it was really hard for me to make friends. I had to use Bumble BFF to even make friends. So I now have like a really solid friend group, so I can see myself being here a while. It's just hard city to stay in, I think, forever, unless, just in my opinion, if for the lifestyle that I want for myself, unless I start making like lots of money and like do a side hustle or something. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's forever, but I also don't know where else I would go.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of the boat. Like I can't think of another city that I'm like dying to live in. Like I've always wanted to live in California, and now I'm here and I'm kind of like I don't know if I feel like maybe if I did meet someone and they wanted to stay here and like it was really working, I could see it, but if I wasn't tied down and I kind of like reached an expiration date here, I would leave. I just would have to figure out like what that next step is, but I don't see that happening for a
Yeah.
while.
I feel that. I'm kind of at that point too. I've been trying to like think of I was considering doing long-term Airbnb rentals in like different cities because then you don't have to pay utilities. But
That's
I was
cool.
like, what where? Like I don't know. So I and I think I underestimated before moving here like how important friend groups are and having a community is. So there's also like that aspect having to start again would be cool
Yeah.
as well.
It's hard. It's hard. And I've thought about that too, like every month, like living somewhere. But I think after having this experience of like trying to make friends, it's hard. And I don't know how I would do in another city for even for short term trying to manage that, especially because like I think you're like me, like to go out, like to meet people, and it's kind of hard to. I've done it, but it's kind of hard to do as a single woman. And like I'm also tired of
Yeah.
traveling. Like I got traveled out this year. I'm definitely not going to stop. Like I already started having plans and I'm getting texts about 2023 plans. This is going to be released in 2023, this episode, but I traveled a lot in my 20s because I knew as I got older I was going to start getting tired, and lo and behold,
Here it
it's
is.
starting to hit me. So yeah, so I don't know like how I would do like living out of a suitcase. Like I don't know. Like I really struggled with that this summer. Because I do want, like, I don't know, like I said before, I'm not necessarily like looking for a relationship, but at some point I would like to try again, I guess, if I meet the right person. And it's hard to do when you're like on the go, like as I learned this year. I think this was a big year of learning for me too. I had a lot of really bad man experiences with a few different guys, so learned a lot from that.
So you feel like you've grown a lot in dating culture in LA as well, like in a positive way, or yeah, what has your year or transition been like?
Well, I feel like this was actually my first year that I've really started not even date. I wouldn't even call it dating because I wasn't even really going on dates, but just like, I guess, putting myself out there more with men here because, like, again, I moved here. I was here for 6 months. I was trying to get the lay of the land. I had some really bad interactions with men at that time as well. And then it was COVID. So I didn't really see that many guys for a couple of years. But this year, I think I was trying to be like more open with people. But it's the biggest adjustment for me here. I've talked a lot about this as well, is it's not a big hookup culture. It's more of like a true dating relationship culture, and not even a relationship like boyfriend, girlfriend, but like a fling here and there, a situationship. Oh, we have to go on a date and then hook up and then I'm going to ghost you. But it's like, then why'd you take me on a date? Like we could have just like, whereas in Philly, like, I mean, I think you were with your boyfriend most of the time, but like, you literally go to a bar and you meet someone and it's, you can make of it what you want. But that just doesn't happen here. The distance, like clickiness, similar to DC, stuff like that. But like a lot of the guys I did meet, some of them weren't even here. Like one was an issue with a guy in San Diego. A couple were like with guys like while I was on vacation. But I think, yeah, I'm just like a very chill person. Like I said, I take things slow, and a lot of guys here are very like want things fast and they want a lot of attention. And I just like wasn't quite there or I was not able to meet their needs, I guess. So I kind of took a break from dating for a while. But yeah, we'll see what happens next. But I'm starting to figure out like what my needs are, setting boundaries, what I'm okay with and not okay with, looking out for signs of love bombing, which happens
that's
a lot
a big
here.
one. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that happen a lot there as well?
I fall right into that trap. Yeah. Because I feel like I get into very deep conversations with people very quickly because I'm not really a big small talk person. And then that can kind of like blur the
Yeah.
lines into love bombing and someone being very like giving a lot of compliments as well. But it sounds like you're on the right path and you're um, learning what you don't like, and that's a way to set boundaries as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just, yeah, it's just hard to meet people here. And there's a lot of like fakeness here, and that carries through into dating too. And I'm not attracted to a lot of people here, and that's looks and personality. So it's hard for me because I'll like meet someone and I'll be interested in them in whatever capacity, and it'll fizzle out or not work out. And then it takes a really long time for me to meet someone again. So that's also like where I struggle. But one day I'll meet someone that treats me well. One day.
I think that's
And you will too.
I agree. I think it's having patience as well, because I feel like we've been told as women that like, a clock is ticking, we have to find someone now. And I've
Yeah.
really realized like part of my growth, I think, has been like just being okay by myself and like finding more power in like friendships and my family and those kinds of things. So I don't really rely on dating, or it's not like the biggest priority in my life anymore.
Yeah, I think I have the opposite where it's like never been like
Yeah.
my priority. And like I have this, I work full time, I'm learning to DJ, like I'm doing a lot of other things. And I think because this culture out here is more, again, relationship, I use that as a very loose term, focused, because I'm not putting dating as a priority. A lot of times people think that like they're not the priority, because I'm not like, just like we were saying before, I'm not like responding fast enough or whatever. Or if I am communicating, I think people take things the wrong way, because like I might say, oh, like I really like you, but that doesn't mean I want to like be your girlfriend tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like stating something like I enjoy, like I like you, you're cool, I enjoy your time. So I think it's just and that's why I have this like whole podcast, is because I think the problems in dating are the same everywhere, like the pros and cons, but like how you navigate it is so different, even in the United States. So I think I've just been like trying to figure that out, because how I approach dating and how I did it in Philly is absolutely not the same year. And this was like my first year really dealing with that because of like COVID and stuff. So now I know like what's important to me and like what to look out for and be careful with my words and things like that. So always a work in progress,
Yep.
I guess.
Well, that's the best you can do, just keep learning, keep growing.
All right. Well, Michelle, I feel like we talked a lot today. I think we talked about a lot of like introspective topics too, which was nice. And I feel like you and I are actually like very kind of similar daters, which is funny
Yeah,
too.
well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope other people resonate with what we've talked about. I think it's a lot of important topics.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm glad we got to catch up.